Thank you very much that you join us in this last plenary session, the only one for metrology. Initially, when I saw the program, I felt very, very sad. My name is Georgios. I'm offering my services for Emirates Metrology Institute. So I felt very sad that we have just one plenary, and this plenary is after this, during the second day, after the lunchtime. However, after the yesterday initial speech of His Excellency, our chairman, and also His Excellency, our Secretary General, both of them, they, let's say, finish their speeches with the Emirates Metrology Institute. And I was thinking that the Emirates Metrology Institute will begin this event, Abu Dhabi Quality Forum, the second, and Emirates Metrology Institute will finish this. So Emirates Metrology Institute is everywhere. So I felt okay because of this. Speaking about metrology, and since this is the only one plenary session, we all know that we're speaking about three categories, main categories of metrology: the legal metrology and the industrial scientific metrology. Okay, somebody can think this is a paradox. You told us about three categories, and after that you told us two categories, legal, industrial, scientific. This paradox, I think, will be solved, will be explained later on. But first, we shall begin this session, this journey in metrology, speaking about the legal metrology, which is historically maybe the first category of metrology which is, let's say, implemented. Having this in mind, I would like to give the microphone to our good friend, Mr. Peter Mason, who, what to say about Peter? He's chief executive in NMO. NMO is the legal metrology organization of UK, and he's also president of OEML. So he's serving legal metrology from the top of the pyramid up to the bottom, I can say. Peter has a huge experience in managing these kind of things, and also he used to be the main, and he is still now, the main consultant of the government of UK related to measurements. So the first question that I would like to make to Peter is the following. We know that in industrial metrology we have a pyramid. We have the end users of calibration of measuring instruments, we have the calibration laboratories, we have the NMIs, we have the BIPM. Peter, please explain us what is the pyramid for the legal metrology, and what is the role of each element of this pyramid?
Well, thank you very much for that that introduction and that invitation to speak on behalf of legal metrology. Though in fact my responsibilities within the UK cover all aspects of metrology. And perhaps before I answer your question, I would like to make a more general observation about this session, because I think it is really important that we have an opportunity to look at the matters in the way that they have been described today, which is the impact of metrology on the lives of modern citizens. And actually, there is an impact on citizens in all three areas. And I think it's really helpful for us to remind ourselves that ultimately everything that we do is aimed at improving the lives of individual citizens. And if I then translate that into the three varieties of metrology that you have mentioned, and the question I ask myself is, what is the consequence of poor metrology? What is the consequence of poor legal metrology? Well, generally speaking, that means that the user pays too much. he is cheated. And typically, when you're talking about things where you want somebody else to do the measurement, you do not know if you have been cheated. The problems or the issue with industrial metrology at its most simple is that the products will not work. The components will not fit together. And the consequence of poor scientific metrology is that the advances in science, which depend on good measurement, will be delayed. They will not take place. They will go in different directions. So poor metrology has an impact on citizens in every aspect. But actually, that's not how it works in practice, because consumers can identify at least the risk of poor legal metrology. And what happens under those circumstances is that they choose not to trade with traders that they do not feel able to trust. And equally, if users of industrial metrology do not trust the metrology of those who are supplying them, they will move to somebody else. And scientific metrology, scientific advances will happen eventually. They'll just happen later and somewhere else. So I think it is really important that Abu Dhabi has taken this initiative to identify the importance of metrology alongside standards and alongside conformity assessment as part of the essential entry into the markets in which they wish to compete. Now, moving on to your question about the structure, actually, we are part of the general metrology structure. The metrology that is used for legal purposes traces back to the same fundamental units that we look to our colleagues in the National Metrology Institutes, such as NPL, such as potentially EMI, but we use them for legal purposes. And I define legal metrology either in a very narrow sense, which is the use of measurement in trade, or in potentially a very wide sense, which is the question of whether you have done something which has legal consequences which turn on a reading from a machine, the measuring instrument. In terms of a structure, the typical structure is one where we depend on the primary standards held by NMIs, but they are then made available to legal metrology authorities in individual countries who will draw up rules and who will look to a range of arrangements to make sure that those rules are applied. Some of those rules will be applied by public authorities, some by the private sector operating under contract, sometimes through separate conformity assessment bodies. And all of that happens at the national level, and ultimately we're talking about things which public authorities take responsibility for. And that, I think in your terms, is the bottom of the pyramid. OIML has for 60 years been at the top of the pyramid as an organization which brings together those national authorities and does several things in order to support those national authorities. I think there are 5 areas I would draw attention to in what OIML does. They are the 5 constituent areas of our strategy, which is set out in our website. And interestingly, the first of those is we are a standards-making body. We make international recommendations, we call them recommendations, but they are really standards. The standards for weighing equipment, the standards for petrol pumps, the standards for packaged goods, and those are made within the framework of OIML as an international standards-making organization. And the second thing that we do, and it's been mentioned by the director in a couple of discussions, is we carry out or we organize a framework of conformity assessment, allowing national authorities to give mutual recognition to the test results and the type approval decisions that each of them have made in their own areas. So we've already got conformity assessment and standards as two of our essential activities. And the third is that we represent the interests of the legal metrology community at an international level with the other organizations that are necessary for this framework, because the bringing together of standards, metrology, conformity assessment, which we have seen in this forum, which we have seen in the work of QCC, has its equivalents at the international level, where ISO, ILAC, BIPM introducing the scientific metrology representation at that national level, and ourselves all need to work together. So actually there's an important component of what we do, which is to ensure that the work that you're doing at QCC to bring these elements together also happens at the international level. The fourth activity that we engage in will introduce the middle level of the pyramid that I think you are asking me to draw. Because the fourth activity is one where we have, where we seek to support members of the legal metrology community across the world, across the globe. And we do that at the international level, mainly by producing guides and documents and offering a forum for discussions. But what we have learned over the last 10 or 15 years, actually possibly a bit more than that, is that collaboration between nation states does not work if it is only at the international level. Regional cooperation is also important. As a result of that, it is a great pleasure to be sharing a platform with the chair of GulfMet, because GulfMet, I think, should be regarded as one of the organizations that produces that collaboration at a regional level. And certainly within OIML, we are very anxious to promote regional organizations and to have a proper separation of activity between what we do at international level and what we work with our colleagues in the regions to do at regional level. And the final thing that we do, I am pleased to say, I don't think we need to do in Abu Dhabi or in the UAE. And because our fifth area of activity is to try to persuade the government colleagues of our legal metrology administrations of the importance of metrology. Now, clearly, that is not necessary here. Virtually every time we have had a reference to quality, to the work of QCC, metrology has featured. As you have pointed out, we started off with the work of the EMI, and we are finishing with it. But that is also an important part of OIML's mission, to explain and to encourage the understanding across governments of the importance of metrology, and in particular legal metrology. But the final thing that I would point out about our organization, arising from everything that I have said, is that it is a membership organization. It is one which seeks to serve the member states who are our constituent members. What we do is driven by our membership, and everything that I have described is the result of discussions that we've had with the representatives of each of the member states, and an agreement that that is the right thing that we ought to be doing at the international level to promote legal metrology.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Mr. Mason, about this, all these details that you shared with us about your organization, OEML. Going back to this paradox, industrial scientific metrology, I want to combine this with one question that usually the people ask us as EMI. Why a national metrology institute is, let's say, is necessary? How a national metrology institute is related, big, let's say, measuring capabilities are related with the economy of one country. Is a direct relation between big NMIs and big economies. I would like to ask this question to one gentleman, one old friend that we have here, and what to say about him. He's a researcher, he's a metrologist, he's a professor, he's working in NPL. I'm very happy he's also my friend. We have him as for a second time here. And please, Professor Kamal, if you can help us to answer these questions to our audience.
Thank you very much, Giorgio. It is a great pleasure to be here the second time round. And I think you kept saying, my old friend. I'm old, but not so old, you know. Young at heart. I think probably the first comment I'd like to, industrial metrology is something that people have different views. If we ask the people in this room, what do you mean by metrology, you get different answers. Is it all about weighing and checking things that are happening in the jewelry? Or is it about what's happening with the big technology-hungry organizations which produce the modern days industrial goods and so on? And you'll get different answers. Metrology, probably it's right to say, and the Royal Society of the UK said this, that it's the most unsung hero in their understanding. That everybody knows metrology exists, they don't take care of what they actually do, they benefit from it, but their praise is not there. And we're not always looking for praise, but sometimes a good appreciation is a good thing. But why is it important? Because it's important because for competitiveness, while UAE are very keen to develop their plan according to the 2030 plan, is going to be crucial, metrology. It's also important for, as Peter and others have said, for the quality of life of the citizen. Now, Peter said that metrology in the end all comes back to, I think you said, quality of life. If you go to America, they say everything comes to the buck. You know, your quality of life, how many days you're off, how you're not feeling, you can convert it to dollars. Now you can go two ways, depending on which part of the world you live in. But certainly it matters in both cases. It's important also for grand challenges, and this is energy, health, environment, and so on. So if you look at what's happening in terms of global challenges, without metrology, and I'll give some examples, you will see that you cannot get there, meet those challenges. And that's something is good to appreciate. Interestingly, George mentioned about the NMIs and so on. I'm very pleased that at almost the opening session, EMI was mentioned, and I hope the confirmation officially will come soon. That will be the best news I can have from my 2 years of connection with this country. And I would also say that hopefully you will demonstrate that being first there, you can be the leader in the Gulf metrology, Gulf Met as well. So you've got an ambition, you are investing, you appreciate the value of metrology, so you've got all the opportunity in front of you to grab the land, as I would say. Now, if you look at the countries around the world, the first NMI was created in Germany, and that was nearly 125 years ago. And then it was the UK, nearly 114 years ago, and then US came somewhere around 110 years. So in terms of very well-developed countries, the economies and so on, you can see the NMIs were established a long, long time ago. And then if you move to the near times, and near is relative, you can see that Korea, for example, created an NMI that's really moving forward very fast. They are industrially very strong, and that's helped them enormously. Singapore has one, but the most noticeable one is probably China at the moment, where the investment is huge. They have realized how important metrology is and what role the NMI can do. In fact, the investment in China, the developed economies cannot match that kind of investment. The investment is so huge. So it's very important to appreciate that if you are going to meet your 2030 ambition, metrology is probably the biggest enabler, and that's the thing to bear in mind. It's the biggest enabler you will have. Without that, you cannot do anything. You cannot have quality. Your QCC cannot operate without metrology. Just metrology will not do the job. You need the accreditation standards. But if you don't have the basis for measurement, how are you going to check in the market things are operating properly? And that metrology does not stay put. It develops all the time. So you've got to be developing your NMI and your activities as you go along. So I'm just going to give you one or two examples. I think everybody now recognizes the global nature of our current life. We live in a world where we travel across the world very easily. We trade with the world. So if you take the UK, in a year, the trade on which depends on measurement is something in excess of 620 billion pounds. That's more than 2 or 3% of the GDP that depends on good measurement. If you just take natural gas as a thing, natural gas, there's the annual trade is something like 20 billion pounds, and 75% of that is going to be imported. So the UK will pay money to get natural gas. Now, how are you going to buy it if you don't know its calorific value, if you don't know its concentration, if you don't know what damage it's going to do to your pipeline? And all those will require metrology at a level that you have not seen before. The old techniques of measuring the concentration of gas will not be applicable to the natural gas that we are getting now and the synthetic gas that we are developing all the time. So in terms of trade, there is no doubt in all our minds that it's going to be vital. What about industrial competitiveness? If you look at industrial competitiveness and go back to some real big hitters in science, Lord Kelvin, for example, said, to measure is to know. And we often say, if you cannot measure it, you cannot make it. You cannot make it in the sense that you can make one or two of these things, but you cannot make it on a regular basis, you cannot have consistent performance, and you cannot get the reliability and the confidence in the market that you need. So if you take aero engine, I mean, Rolls-Royce is a world leader in terms of aero engine production. One of the biggest challenges Rolls-Royce has is actually to produce engines which are efficient, and more efficient than ever before. Every drop of fuel in their engine matters, because the emission that causes problem, and there is a huge pressure on the industry. So they are developing less and less gas-hungry engine every year. And how do they do it? They actually have to make maybe hundreds of thousands of measurements for one single gas turbine engine that they develop. Now, to develop that engine and to make those measurements, you wouldn't believe it, but they use something like 200,000 measurement devices. And how do you make sure that those things work properly? How do you make sure the results they're getting from those are reliable and so on? And that's where the challenge comes from Rolls-Royce. So from their design to the production and service to specification, to quality control, and to waste management, in all those aspects, the measurement becomes a very important part. And that's where your NMI, as we are the NMI in the UK, work very closely with Rolls-Royce. We have trained 1,000 of their measurement, including their suppliers, people who make measurements, and that Rolls-Royce value enormously. And we are trying to develop that kind of relationship with other big manufacturers. So it's important that as an NMI, you can connect with your industry. If your industry wants to stay at the top, your NMI cannot have 10-year-old knowledge. They have got to develop their knowledge. They have got to keep up with the development that's going worldwide and be on par. And if not on par in every field, at least the areas that your industry needs it, your NMI has got to give them the support. So industrial competitiveness, I've given you an example. I'm now going to mention one or two sort of areas like grand challenges. So if you take energy as a challenge, it's a challenge in all parts of the world. You've got to produce energy that is not going to create the problem that we have with the environment. To produce that energy, we need to have more renewable energy. And renewable energy means that the aim is to produce something like 30% of the energy by 2050. Now that target, no one is sure will be met. But if you do meet that, if you have your wind turbines in your van, if you have solar cells on your roof, if you have a big solar cell facility, one thing that many people don't appreciate is that the supply and the distribution is going to change. So at the moment, you've got big power stations supplying power to the country, maybe power to the region. As soon as you bring in these small generators, even domestic generators, and they're all connected to the grid will not work in the same way as it does at the moment. And these grids are going to be called smart grids. And the smart grids, the supply is going to be many sources. You've got to switch on and off. But the biggest challenge the smart grids will have is to understand the quality of power. So if you have power quality poor, your computer will not work. Your TV will fail. And you can see how you can get into difficulty because in the US, only a couple of years ago, there was a total blackout in some part of the country. And why did that happen? Because they are not controlling power quality. And why couldn't they control power quality? Because they could not measure the power quality at the sufficient level. So it's that kind of example you've got to think to say we need to develop metrology that will allow you to go for higher and higher technologies to meet the greater and greater challenges you have in the world. Environment, we know that one of the biggest challenges is to keep the environment free of the gases that harm our globe. But a big challenge is how do you know what the temperature of the Earth is? And how do you know what the emission level is? Without metrology, you cannot be sure. And if you cannot be sure, and you think your temperature, Earth temperature, is going to increase by 2 to 4 degrees C in 10 years rather than 20 years, you'll be building dams, you'll be building infrastructure that can cope with these big changes in the atmosphere. Some of you may be aware that the UK had a huge problem with floods this year. And some people think it's to do with global warming, and people are crying out for defense systems that are built. And that costs money to the government. If you've got to build it in the next 5 years, that's quite a different proposition for a government that's in power now than one that says we need it in 30 years' time. So metrology is going to be vital, and your NMI plays a key role. Perhaps, again, in a country like Emirates, you know the water quality is important, you know the air quality is important, you know the food quality is important. In all these fields, measurements, not just the physical measurements, but chemical measurements, biological measurements, and environmental measurements will be key to this. I think probably I might stop there. I can talk about health and other things. But certainly the comment I would make is that it's great that you have recognized the importance of metrology. You are nearly there in terms of announcing your National Metrology Institute. And the sooner you start it and you actually work with the international community, where we are very pleased to do it. And some of you may be aware that yesterday Dr. Hilal and I signed an MOU for UK, NMI, and your institute to be collaborating. We are delighted that we've been able to do that, and we look forward to collaboration with you on that front. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. Of course, we all know that the traceability pyramid is based on the end users. After that, we have the calibration laboratories, the NMIs, and the BIPM. So the NMI's capabilities must be accepted by BIPM and by other NMIs. The window to be accepted is the regional metrology organizations. So I forgot to say that my good friend, Professor Kamal, he's also a chairperson of maybe the strongest regional metrology organization in the world, the Euramet. Speaking about regional metrology organization, I will give now the microphone to my good and old friend, Butarek, Mr. Mullah. He's, what to say about him? He's the metrology man in UAE. He began some years ago from Dubai Municipality Labs. He was the director over there. He made accreditation happen from UCAS in Dubai Municipality. And after that, he went to serve his country from another position, from ESMA. Now he's a director. For some years, he's a director of ESMA. And of course, we have the honor as a country to be also the president of the GulfMet. GulfMet is the regional metrology organization that we are trying to establish, and we are trying to be, let's say, accepted by other RMOs and by BIPM. So, Butarek, please explain to all of us, what is the current situation for legal and industrial metrology in GCC countries, since you know, you have this data?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. First of all, I would like to congratulate QCC, and especially EMI, because yesterday we have witnessed the announcement of EMI, and we have seen a very good video yesterday that really showed what is the capability within the EMI at Abu Dhabi. Let me just go a little bit back, since you asked me about the GulfMet. We had in 2009 a round table, okay, and we have invited the director of BIPM at that time, Professor Willard, and also the director of BIML, Mr. Magana, and also Dr. Espina from BIPM. He was the secretary at that time, I think. And we had a discussion about the role of metrology and measurement to the national economies. At the same time, also, we had all the director generals or the leaders of, I would say, national standardization bodies of GCC countries. So at that time, the idea became that we have to develop a real, metrology association or regional metrology association, because really, if we take a look at the national map, this is the area which we don't have such an organization. And as you know, maybe this area also, they have the highest, GDP in terms of the economy, and we have influenced the international economy, very, very widely. So the idea, was developed at that time. So we decided to have the RMO, so-called GulfMet, or Gulf Metrology Association. Then after that, in 2010, we have established the GulfMet. The GulfMet, at the beginning is, of course, under the umbrella of the GSO, Gulf Organization of Standardization, because still we don't have the recognition. So the big challenge that we have at the moment, we have to get the recognition by the international metrology community, which at the top of the pyramid is the BIPM, and of course, in order to manage that, we got the JCRB. Okay, so what we have done a kind of, finding out what is the capability within different countries at the GCC. So we said, okay, first of all, in order to file, to send our file to the BIPM, so we have to have some sort of CMC, or calibration and measurement capability. So the CMC, according to the BIPM, was developed by each single GCC countries. And I think yourself, you have been involved in that. And we had to check whether those CMCs are okay or not, okay? So that was done, and then we filed our request to the BIPM. At the moment, of course, the capabilities among the GCCs are different. So some countries, they have some, I would say, metrology, like, for example, at the moment, UAE, we have very good setup, we have very good metrology infrastructure with the existence of EIM. Of course, earlier we had some sort of metrology capabilities, but not to the extent that we are having now. And also, in addition to that, we got the experts which are really, running those activities. So Emirates, I think we are in a very good position in terms of metrology, and definitely we could be a leader within the GCC country as a measurement. Then we got the Saudi Arabia, we got the calibration and measurement center in Saudi, which was established in 1986. I think they have a very good, maybe in terms of facilities, equipment, but I think still we have a little bit lack in the manpower. Okay, so, but they are also working very hard. Nevertheless, they have a very good relation at the moment with the OMI, Turkey, and they are, the people are going under, very tense training within the OMI. But this is one part. Okay, the government was established. We are trying to get the recognition, so we are working very hard to have this recognition done very soon. Apart from that, we have created 4 different technical committees. So one is the TC quality, one is the TC mass and related quantities, one is the TC electrical and magnetics, and finally we got the TC for temperature and also dimensions. Of course, the head of these laboratories, we are trying to give to the best people who have the knowledge within the metrology. At the moment, UAE, we are hosting 2 TCs, which is one is for the quality, and the other one is for the mass and related quantities. Nevertheless, I think we have had very good collaboration with the Euromet, and we are sending our people, our TC members, to the Euromet TC, equivalent TC, I mean, to gain the experience and to find out how the TC are being run. So I think we are working very hard. We are hoping that in the near future we get this recognition, because our vision within the government to have self-sustained and also self-sufficient regional metrology organization, which will be recognized by the international metrology community. Apart from that, there are also legal metrology, as you mentioned. So for the legal metrology, we got within the, of course, the GCC, there is a committee so-called the steering committee for the metrology. In beginning of the 2007, we have started to work on a unified law within the GCC for metrology. So UAE, actually, we have been involved in developing that law very actively. And this law was actually approved by the board of directors of GSO. But now every country has to align themselves with this unified law. So in the UAE, the work is going on in order to have, because we got already our national measurement system, but we have to fine-tune our national measurement system with this new unified law. So we have done that within the GCC. We have also developed numbers of guidelines as far as the legal metrology is concerned. For example, for the pre-pack, for the type approval, and also I think for measuring equipment like balances, like taximeters, like a fuel dispenser. Few guidelines was published, which are basically based on the OIML recommendation. So these activities are going on within the GCC, and I think that, of course, depends upon the countries, how they want to control the legal metrology instrumentation and also pre-pack within their marketplace.
Thank you, Mr. Mullah. Thank you very much. Now, going from the top, let's say, up to the NMI level, it's my personal, great pleasure to have in this panel with us the Executive Director of EMI, the Executive Director of the future NMI of UAE, who has a profound experience in management in Abu Dhabi, Al Ain Municipality and in UAU University, and who, with his, let's say, support and his presence, I think we accelerated very much our speed to be up to this point, yesterday, today, the coming days, to be nominated. So I want, in front of everyone, to thank him for his effort for this nomination. And since he's the top executive in our Emirates Metrology Institute, he's setting also the mission, the strategies. I would like to share with us which are the mission, why EMI was created, what are the mission of EMI, and what is the strategies of EMI to sustain the sustainable development of its capabilities.
Shukran. Thank you, Dr. Yorgos. First of all, please, I'll speak in Arabic, so use the technology. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. في حقيقة الأمر أنا سعيد جدا أني أشارك في الملتقى هذا، وأن يكون في نفس الحدث إطلاق معهد الإمارات للمترولوجيا، ومن أهم المشاريع والمبادرات المعتمدة في استراتيجية مجلس أبو ظبي للجودة والمطابقة. تكمن أهمية هذه المبادرة أنها تخدم الرؤية الاستراتيجية لحكومة أبو ظبي 2030، وكذلك المنبثقة كذلك من رؤية مجلس أبو ظبي للجودة والمطابقة، والتي من أهم أهدافه الاستراتيجية أو أهدافها الاستراتيجية هو بناء أو تأسيس بنية تحتية قوية للجودة تخدم اقتصاد إمارة أبو ظبي وتحقق التنافسية وتعزيز الشفافية والانفتاح على الأسواق العالمية. فكان من أهم أدوات هذه البنية التحتية إنشاء بنية تحتية للمترولوجيا، والتي تعرف بعلم القياس وتطبيقاته المختلفة. طبعا هذا المشروع أو هذا المفهوم هو جديد، يعتبر على الدول الخليجية بشكل عام أو الدول العربية، ثم نقول دولة الإمارات. لكن طموح الإمارة وطموح دولة الإمارات بشكل عام في تنويع الاقتصاد وتحقيق التنافسية وضبط الأسواق و يعني تقليل الاعتماد على المصدر الرئيسي وهو البترول، جعل أنه لابد أن يتم إنشاء كثير من أدوات الضبط والقياس والفحص والمراقبة، ومنها القياس، والذي يعتبر من أهم الأدوات التي يجب أن تتوفر في الاقتصادات النامية. طبعاً الدور الأساسي لمعهد الإمارات للمترولوجيا هو إنشاء بنية تحتية للمترولوجيا لتقديم خدمات المعايرة للشركات والمختبرات المعايرة، وكذلك توفير مرجعية وطنية للقياس، وهذا الأهم، بالإضافة إلى وجود المحافظة على المواصفة الوطنية للقياس، وبالتعاون مع هيئة الإمارات للمواصفات والقياس، هيئة الإمارات للمواصفات والمقاييس، وتعزيز النظام الوطني للقياس في دولة الإمارات، متوافقاً مع الاشتراطات والمعايير الدولية. فكيف الرؤية كبيرة لهذا المشروع، ولكن كيف كانت خطة التنفيذ وبهذه السرعة؟ لأن أول استراتيجية وأول ركيزة كانت متوفرة في مجلس أبو ظبي للجودة والمطابقة الرؤية الواضحة لهذا المشروع، فكانت رؤية معتمدة ومبرمجة، هو إنشاء establishing the world class infrastructure of metrology. اشتغلنا عليها فارتئينا أن هناك تقريباً 5 ركائز ممكن نركز عليها لتحقيق هذه الرؤية بأسرع وقت ممكن. الركيزة الأولى المرافق المتعلقة بهذا المشروع. طبعاً الحكومة تحتاج مخرجات سريعة في هذا المجال، إذن لابد من تدبير المرافق، فتم إنشاء حالياً 10 مختبرات مختلفة في مجالات المترولوجيا ووفق الاشتراطات والمعايير الدولية، والتي توافق تحقيق قراءات سليمة للمترولوجيا. الركيزة الثانية أنك تمتلك أفضل أجهزة القياس وأحدثها، فكانت كذلك دعم وواضح من المؤسسة في شراء أفضل أجهزة القياس وأحدثها، وتحقق هذه الركيزة، فأصبح الآن المشروع يمتلك أفضل أجهزة القياس، نقول ليس فقط في دولة الإمارات وإنما في المنطقة. الركيزة الثالثة، لأن هذا المشروع ليس له جذور في الدولة، فنحتاج المعرفة، فنحتاج الخبرة، ولجلب الخبرة تم استقطاب أفضل الخبراء في هذا المجال، وعلى رأسهم الدكتور يورغس من الخبراء في مجال المترولوجيا، فأصبح للمشروع أو للمبادرة الخبرة الكافية، التي كذلك لو قارناها مع المعاهد الأخرى في المنطقة نرى أنفسنا أن متقدمين في المجال. أما الركيزة الرابعة فهي استقطاب الكوادر الوطنية، وكان في هذا الموضوع التحدي الأكبر، لأن الجامعاتنا ما تدرس المترولوجيا، وبالتالي علم المترولوجيا علم غير معروف للطلبة، فكيف كان من الممكن للمجلس أن يستقطب كوادر وطنية للعمل في مجال المترولوجيا؟ وبفضل من الله عز وجل ودعم القيادة في مجلس أبو ظبي تم استقطاب تقريباً 8 من المترولوجيين، وتم تدريبهم في معاهد دولية تقريباً 6 دول، أكثر من 10 برامج، ميزانية تقريباً 1,700,000 خلال سنة 2013، فتحققت هذه الركيزة بكفاءة عالية. أما الخامسة هي الرؤية والاستراتيجية وخارطة الطريق، فتم يعني إعداد استراتيجية وخارطة طريق، وبالتعاون مع الشركاء الرئيسيين، ومن بينهم هيئة الإمارات للمواصفات والمقاييس متمثلة بإدارة المترولوجيا أخونا أبو طارق، اشتغلنا عليها كفريق، ثم يعني أصدرنا خارطة طريق واضحة توضح فيها كذلك المرحلة الثانية لمشروع المترولوجيا. فنحن بفضل الله عز وجل الحكومة وضعت لنا رؤى ووضعت لنا سياسات، وبالتالي أخذت المؤسسات هذه الرؤى والسياسات وترجمتها إلى مشاريع. والآن نحن انتهينا من المرحلة الأولى، فللمختبر أو للمعهد هذا الآن القدرات التالية: قدرة التدريب والاستشارات، وقدرة المعايرة، وأعلى دقة القياس، وكذلك التعاون كذلك في اللجان الفنية سواء في الإقليمية أو الدولية. وهي دعوة للمؤسسات والحكومات، يعني للمؤسسات المعنية بخدمات المترولوجيا، أن تلجأ إلى معهد الإمارات للمترولوجيا، لأن الآن المعرفة والخبرة متوفرة في البلاد، وبتوفر عليهم المبالغ خارج الدولة والوقت وكذلك الكفاءة. وشكرا.
Thank you, Doctor, very much. Some minutes ago, I received this nice envelope. We have to stop in 5 minutes from now. Give us this, please. So I will ask you, to each one of you, one question. So please, in 1 minute, if possible, give your answers. I will first begin with Mr. Mullah. Mr. Mullah, a lot of people ask me, they are confused. What is the relations of ESMA with QCC, EMI? Please define it clearly. What will be, let's say?
I think before I say that, already Dr. Hilal talked about that, and he said we have done the roadmap for the EMI with the collaboration between the ISMA and the QCC. So I don't think there is any doubt about that. Okay, let me give a little bit more also in depth about this. UAE is going to be the BIPM member, inshallah, this year. Okay. So we have waited a little bit long in order that this EMI come into the life. Because really, for you to be the member within the BIPM, and you do not gain any, feedback or any, let's say, any help or any support, so it's useless. So 2014, we are going to ask for the membership. Already we have started the procedure. We have already made communication with our foreign ministry, and hopefully in the very near future, we are going to be the BIP member. Okay, but of course, ISMA, as ISMA, we don't have the laboratories, as you know. So we have to depend upon what? Upon the EMI, because the EMI soon is going to be our National Measurement Institute, or I would say the designated National Measurement Institute. Because by the law, the ISMA is the overall responsibility for the metrology in the country. So that is very clear. It is a matter of time that now the EMI has been established, and very soon we are going to work toward that. So that is, I don't think there is any doubt. And as you know that you are also involved in our many activities within the thesis, okay, either on the national level or on GCC level. The traceability for the UAE will be based on this relation. So because the EMI, the moment becomes the designated national measurement institute, so all the measurement that is going to take place within the country should be traced to the national. So rather than, for example, we got a very huge industry within the country. For example, the petroleum and gas is huge within the country. But it will be really pity that we got all this measurement take place outside the UAE and not within the EMI. So we have to create this traceability for the industry, okay, for the gas and the petroleum, for the chemistry, and I think within the UAE we got the vision for 2030 for Abu Dhabi and 2021 for the UAE to be one of the best countries among the world. Or in that case, so you have to have a very sound infrastructure for metrology, and I think the EMI can play a very important role in that, and is going to be soon, inshallah, our
Thank you.
National
Thank you very much.
Metrology Institute.
For some reason, I prefer to speak about authorized metrology institutes, not designated, because produce a lot of confusion. But we can speak about this later, the later days. I would like to ask Professor Kamal. Always there is a challenge of expansion of EMI, of NMI, and the needs of the economy. Where this investment, this investment, this money, where this money has to be balanced by the economy, in what point an NMI must stop doing things, let's say, must stop investing more?
I mean, I think in the beginning, the investment has to come from the government, because we are talking about anticipating providing services in areas where they're not well established. And if you look at all the economies, the strong economies, that is still the case. Not only did they start the NMIs in the beginning, for the UK, for example, Germany, US, and so on, every country has got a continued guarantee or a resource provided by the government, because much of the work done does not benefit a small number of identifiable organizations. The benefits are much wider, and hence government can justify providing support from the government budget rather than asking the NMI to recoup all the cost. When you've got a service that's well provided, the customers are identifiable, then you can try and recover most of your cost from there. But to develop new services, you need investment, and I think their government has to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. One question also for Mr. Mason. Mr. Mason, there are different approaches of covering the legal metrology responsibilities, let's say, for measuring equipment, for prepackaged as well. Outsourcing approaches, governmental approaches, let's say, all in the government. What you propose in our case here, that's the best approach?
That is a question which I will not answer, because I do not think that there is an easy answer. The one thing that I have learned while I've been in this position is that no two countries are the same. Some countries are even more different than others, but no two countries are the same, no two systems are the same. But what there are a number of examples of national authorities who have grappled with the questions of how to deal with local enforcement and national policy making, how to deal with relationships between federal level and state level, how to deal with expectations of the introduction of the private sector. There is a lot of experience within our membership, and I think that I certainly could not answer this question within the 1 minute which is available to me, but what I can say is that we see it as being an important part of the OIML role to assist our members in working through these ideas, that we do provide guidance material and support for countries who are all asking this question, and we are able to provide a forum for discussion and to be able to point to people who can allow you to develop policy in what is a very, very difficult but very, very important area.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. I think you gave me the answer I was looking for. You will provide all the assistance to us in order our people to find the best solution for our needs, to cover our needs. And of course, I could not finish without asking a last question to Dr. Hilal. Dr. Hilal, can you please tell us, to all of us, what is the vision of EMI?
The vision أو الرؤية، بتكلم بالعربي، الرؤية لمعهد الإمارات للمترولوجيا كما تم مناقشتها من خلال جلسة إعداد الاستراتيجية والرود ماب وخارطة الطريق للمعهد، هي لأن يكون المرجع الإقليمي للقياس. فبالتالي يجب أن نؤسس بنية تحتية قوية في مجال المترولوجيا وتطبيقات المترولوجيا، بحيث إن شاء الله يكون هو المعهد ذات القدرات الفنية والإدارية أن يكون مرجعاً للمنطقة. فلذلك أحد المشاريع الحالية عندنا هو المرحلة الثانية من المشروع هذا، وأبشر الجميع أن الآن الحكومة خصصت للمعهد أرض تقريباً 22,000 متر مربع في منطقة الشامخة، وتم اختيارها، وبنبتدي إن شاء الله من السنة الجاية التصاميم التفصيلية للمشروع ثم البناء، لكي يكون المرجع إن شاء الله ذات إمكانيات متكاملة بإذن الله.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And with that approach of the vision of EMI to be the leader in the region, the measurement leader in the region, we close this. If you don't have something to ask, we can close this session. One of our excellencies, before the beginning, he told me, Doctor, I will make you a very, very difficult question. That's why I am looking forward to close this before this question. But please, feel free.
Can I raise my question? Okay. الرائد مريم محمد راشد من الأمانة العامة من مكتب سمو وزير الداخلية. Sorry, I will raise my question in Arabic. سؤالي موجه لسعادة مدير عام المعهد. في مجال نشر ثقافة هذا العلم المتخصص، هل في نية مستقبلاً أن المعهد يقوم بإعداد وتنفيذ برامج تعليمية أكاديمية في التأهيل الكوادر الوطنية في هالمجال؟
سؤال مو واضح الصوت.
الصوت مو واضح؟ اوكي. اقول مستقبلا يعني المعهد الامارات للقياس، هل في نيه ان في مجال نشر هذا النوع من الثقافه، اعداد او طرح برامج اكاديميه في مجال اعداد كوادر وطنيه في هالمجال؟
طبعا نحن نعتبر الكوادر الوطنيه لتحقيق الاستدامة لابد أن يتم تأسيس كوادر وطنية أو مواهب وطنية ضليعة وخبيرة في هذا المجال. فأول مراحل التدريب إن شاء الله والتأهيل هم معرفتهم المجالات العمل المترولوجيا المختلفة. بعد ذلك إن شاء الله بيدخلون في البحوث. بعد ذلك إن شاء الله بيحضرون الماجستير والدكتوراه في هذا المجال. لأن رهاننا نحن لو أسسنا أفضل المشاريع كبنية تحتية، لكن ما أسسنا الإنسان الإماراتي ذات القدرة على تشغيل هذا المشروع، فبالتالي نحن مشروعنا ناقص. فيعتبر الكادر الإماراتي المواطن مهم للمعهد، ولذلك يجب أن نضع كذلك نحن خطة لجذب الكوادر الوطنية ومسار وظيفي واضح، بحيث أنه في المستقبل ما يضطر أن يترك هذه الوظيفة لأنها فنية وبحتة، يستمر في مجال هذا العمل حتى يصبح إن شاء الله خبير، وبالتالي هو ينقل الخبرات إلى الأجيال القادمة.
شكرا.
عفوا، بس تعقيب بسيط على كلام دكتور هلال. ترى نحن شغالين مع معاهد على مستوى العالم كله، فكان عندنا قبل فترة طبعا ضيوف من الكوريا أو معهد الكوري للمترولوجيا كريس. ففي الكوريا عندهم برنامج بحيث ممكن شبابنا اللي داخلين في مجال المترولوجيا في المعهد ياخذون الماجستير ومن ثم الدكتوراه في نفس المجال. فهذا المكان الوحيد اعتقد على مستوى العالم اللي يقدمون هاي البرنامج. فان شاء الله نحن على قدم وساق على اساس يكون عندنا نوع من مذاكره التفاهم مع المعهد الكوري. فمن خلال المذاكره ان شاء الله شبابنا بيحصلون على مدارج عاليه في مجال المترولوجيا.
So we are finishing. Thank you very much for your passion. Thank you very much for your presence here. Please stay here because we shall have the closing event right now. Thank you very much.